Hey there, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, hi, I'm Christy. I am in Northern Alberta, Canada. Today in my vlog, I would like to share with you some of the things that I did to preserve some extra vegetables that I had found in my garden and in my greenhouse as I was cleaning it out and getting it prepared for the big freeze up. So I ended up getting a ton of extra produce and for my freezer that my family will be able to use as a bonus of things that I didn't expect to have. So here's a few things that I've done to maximize that production out of my garden. And also I am sharing with you a few meals that I whipped together really quickly this week. It's been so busy around here. And so these are just kind of like things that I have done to make my life easier and get my family fed using food that we grew and preserved. So I hope you enjoy. Before we get to finding some vegetables to preserve up, we need to feed the horses and get them taken care of. It's starting to snow. Let's go, guys. Let's go get some supper. Iceman rolled in the mud again. Really? Are you trying to pretend you're a moose? You're too short, bud. Too short. I feel like I'm leading the trail. Cats over there, dogs, horses. I just need a donkey. You kind of are a donkey sometimes. Hey, Coconut. Look at little wild barn kitties. So wild. So wild. Look at you. Vicious wild kitten. What are you guys doing in here? So somewhere in this mess of bales, there's a whole bunch of chicken eggs. I still have not found them. We're getting closer. I can feel it. Eventually we'll find them all, hopefully before they rot. Okay, so I found the celery in the greenhouse. Now let's get some processing done with it. Now some of the celery I found in there was pretty woody, and I kind of picked through, just washed everything as best I could, and I decided I'd like to freeze some as little packs, and I would like to freeze them along with some carrots that I harvested. This is one random bucket that I found of extra carrots. I have like 3 times this amount already in the fridge, so I'd like to start using these up. So I'm just kind of chopping these up. As I'm going through any pieces like this, I'm just going to throw them straight into this scrap bowl because that's going to go into my bone broth or vegetable chicken stock when I'm ready to make it. So I'm kind of going for this size to chop up into the soup, and I'm leaving any in for fresh eating that are like baby carrots, so they fit perfectly in the lunch kit and they don't need much work, just got to scrub them up. And they store a little bit better for me that way. And that's what I'm doing. I have one container cut up of the carrots already. I have one of these celery. I'm going to probably do another one of these, and then I'm going to work on the onions. But I need to go put my contacts in before I have that misery. So as I was cleaning out in the greenhouse, I found this interplanted with the celery with a whole bunch of onions that I missed when I did my main harvest. And so that made quite a bit chopped up. I didn't even use all of them. That's quite a lot of chopped up onion that I can use for my soups. I also found some extra garlic. There was a few bits and pieces of garlic here and there, and this stuff I didn't think it would store very well, so I decided to use this up. I am keeping all of the peels and scraps for both my garlics and the onions. and any little tiny pieces of garlic, I'm throwing it into the scrap bowl. I used a press to mince up the pieces I'm using in my preservation, but these are going to be used to make a stock at a later time, and I will pressure can that. But this stuff is going to get frozen in my little Ziploc packs that I will be making with onion, celery, carrots, and some parsley. I found parsley growing outside in the snow. Can you believe it? And it's perfect. So the stems I'm putting into my bags for my bone broth. So I've already sorted out a couple bags that I will be using to dump into my stock pot when I'm doing my chicken broth and stuff, which is a totally separate video. I just wanted to let you know I'm not wasting anything whatsoever. But what I'm showing you is I am using, this is a half cup, and no, it's a third cup. It's a 1/3 cup measure, and I'm adding 2/3 of a cup of chopped onion. This is so hard to do. By the way, I broke my tripod, and this is impossible for me to do one-handed, but I'm giving it all. Oh my gosh, the struggle. But I did it. I feel like this is like I need a hero cookie or something. Victory was had. So I'm adding 2 cups of carrots to the bag. So the bottom layer is 2/3 of a cup of chopped onions, and then I'm adding two cups. Eventually, I do it. 2 cups of chopped carrot or sliced carrots into the bag, and then I'm adding 2 cups of celery to the bag. It's like when you're watching a YouTube video and you're like, dang, that girl needs help, and you realize it's you. Okay, so I got 2 cups of celery, and then just a teaspoon of garlic right on top. And there it is. Oh, I forgot the parsley. One sec. 1/3 of a cup fresh parsley. You could use carrot tops or whatever. We're just making, this is just for soup or casseroles or whichever. Just easy peasy. We're trying to maximize how much we're getting out of our garden. And I cannot do this up with one hand, but it zips up like this. And if you want to reuse your bags, you can. What I do is I actually have a bag in my freezer where all of these bags go. I don't wash them. If I'm using them for veggies like this, I just refreeze them inside of another Ziploc bag. And then when I do a batch, I just pull the whole batch out and reuse them. If they're really bad, I throw them away. But I can get 2 to 3 uses out of these bags, and sometimes even more. So yeah. So I'm going to actually use some of these ingredients. I have this bin empty, and I'm going to use some of these ingredients for making supper tonight. I think I'm just going to make some chicken noodle soup, just really quick and easy. It's been a really busy day, and Tyson's out in the cold right now cutting firewood. So I'm just going to do the same measurements, 1/3, 2/3, and then I'm going to do, oh, wrong measurement. The 1 cup measure, 2 cups of celery, and, oops, whoopsie, 2, and then 2 cups of carrots, if I can get my spoon in there. I am making a mess. Oh my gosh, this one-handed stuff is really challenging. Okay, 2. And then we'll need some parsley and garlic. So I could do the garlic right here. Garlic. Ooh, I put a little bit more than what I've been putting in the packs. That's okay. And then I'm just gonna chop this up really quick like I've been doing in the packs. Okay, so I have a little bit more than that. So I'm just gonna actually throw that in the bone broth container. But I'm just gonna dump that in here. So this is gonna be for supper. I'm just gonna set it out of the way so we can finish getting the rest of the stuff done. But so that will be exactly the same as these packets, except for it hasn't been frozen. Now the rest of this stuff, I'm just gonna do it as by itself in packs so that I can just take them out for a recipe as I need them. So I ended up getting 6 of these mixes for doing soup bases or casseroles with the onion, celery, parsley, garlic, and carrots. So there's 6 of them. And then I got 2 carrots, just individual. There's about 3 cups of carrots in there. There's about 2 cups of celery, just individual, and about 2 cups of onions in here as well. So I like to put them in there thin, then I can bust them up and just use a handful and leave them in the freezer, so it's really close and quick and easy to just grab them. Then I don't have to individually freeze them. I just put them in here thin, and then I can just whack it on the counter and they bust apart super easy. And these as well, I'll have a big Ziploc bag, and I'll fold up these bags and put them in as long as they're not damaged. I will put them in and refreeze the empty bags, so then when I do another big batch of onions, I can grab the big bag of small bags out of the freezer and reuse them, and I don't have to buy any more Ziploc. It's not ideal, but I do try to minimize how much waste I have. All of these vegetables were harvested last minute. We had snow come, and these were all ones that I just kind of grabbed, the straggly things that I found, random stuff. This was basically after my main harvest. This is just kind of what regrew, and kind of like those little hidden gems you find in the garden after growing season is coming to a close. So all of this stuff is bonus. This is bonus food. And these soup bases will make enough for a meal and then another meal, either a lunch or another dinner. There's so many meals here just taking the time to do this today. And then don't forget all of the stuff from processing these. We're going to make bags so we can use that for our stock or like our soup base in the future when we're making bone broth or chicken stock or beef stock. We will have those ready to go to just dump into the roaster with our bones or with the meat that we're going to be using, and to cook down and make a broth, which you'll usually give about 10 to 14 quart jars at the end of the project. So this is a lot of food for what it was and the amount of effort it took. This is our supper one. I'm just going to set this to the side so we can continue on with our bags. So these bags already have carrots from when I cut them up, but I'm going to add some more because I have a lot of carrots, and we really like carrots in our broth, so I'm just going to kind of just go and do handfuls. Usually what I do is for these projects is when I'm harvesting, I usually pull these oddball ones out and put them separate so that I can actually just do this much easier. They're already sorted in the field. I just harvested everything, but all the ones that are kind of funky, I just toss them whole right in there. These guys, for the most part, these are pretty decent carrots. They're just either small or a funny shape, and I'm just gonna kind of huck them in there. I do leave the tops on a lot of them unless they're really yucky. So yeah, these guys are all the funny shaped ones. I try to scrub them out as best as I can. I don't mind, because this is cooking for a long time, I don't mind that there is compost particles in here, because here in our climate we have to take humic supplements and fulvic acid supplements, which is something that's naturally occurring basically in compost. So I don't mind just getting it naturally from what we are consuming. And I'm just going to use up all these carrots. It's not, I don't necessarily need to have that many carrots in my broth, but we're going to just use them up because I have lots to kind of get through. It'll be a very carroty broth. Next, I'm going to put in my peelings for the onions. So there's garlic peelings in here too, so I'm just going to put little handfuls of garlic peels in each one. Kind of evenly as possible. There's whole cloves in here as well, but I'm just gonna kind of wing it. When I make broth, I'm straining all of this stuff out. It's just gonna cook for a long time, and all of this stuff is clean. It's just the peelings, and there's lots of good nutrition in this stuff, which is really important. You always want to have some of this on hand because especially if someone gets sick, there's lots of good nutrition. And this is all 100% homegrown. I grew every single thing of this stuff in the compost. I made it myself. The fertilizer is actually this stuff. I didn't use any of my homemade fertilizer this year. I just used compost. So it did get fish emulsion, I think early on when I planted everything. But so yeah, I can be done right now. I could actually put my carcass, chicken carcass in here if I wanted to. They're all frozen, so I'm not going to do that. But that's something that I've done before too in these big bags. I will, if I had these done prior to us processing our chickens, then I would take my pieces of chicken that I wanted to make in the broth, and then I would set them on top. Then I could just take this whole bag and throw it in my stock pot or in my roaster and then roast it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bag, and I might add a few things to it yet and fill it up more. But what I'm going to do with this bag is I'm going to pop them in the freezer, and when I'm ready to make my stock with my chicken bones or my beef bones, whatever I decide to do, I will put it in my big roaster, and I will put the chicken bones or beef bones in there as well, and I'll put 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in the roaster, and then I will fill the roaster or the stock pot to the top and let it simmer for at least 24 hours. And then I will pressure can strain out the pieces, and then I will just take the pure liquid and I will put them into quart or pint jars, and then I will pressure can them. Or you can freeze them. It's completely up to you. But this is what I do. Doesn't have to be this order, whatever. These are all just scraps. Each bag will make at least 10 quarts minimum of bone or stock, like broth. So when I do it the way I do it, it'll make a minimum. One of these bags of scraps will make a minimum of 10 quarts. So figure that out in the math with and this is just the scraps from what we were processing for our food prep or food preservation project today of the odds and ends we found in the garden. So bonus. Got all of those to fit into one of these cubes that I can set into the freezer, which is, it's not perfect because it's like a miscellaneous bin, but I'll just show you what I did. I just kind of got to remember, keep a mental note, but my mixes are down here. These I'll pull out when I'm ready to make stock, which will make more space, but I just kind of got to dig through here. It's easier to pull these out of the freezer and dig through. I got a set of these. I think they come in 6-packs on Amazon, and they were quite inexpensive, and I do throw them in the freezer. And then usually this is a little lower, I can stack them. In the deep freezes, I can get too high when I'm organized. So I'm going to go throw this in the freezer. So now let's get started on making our soup for supper. I just decided to toss this in to some hot oil in one of my stock pots and get it all heated up. Saute that a little bit. So while the aromatics are going on the stove, I thought I would make some biscuits to go with our soup tonight. So I'm starting out with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I buy it's organic flour that I buy from Organic Matters. And to that, I'm adding 2 teaspoons of aluminum-free baking powder. Aluminum-free is important for us in our climate. We tend to get skin irritation when we have too much aluminum in our diet from our solar storms that we get up here. I'm also adding a 1/4 teaspoon, I think it was, of salt, Himalayan salt. I'm giving the veggies on the stove a stir. It smells so good. And I decided I'm going to add some chicken that I pressure canned up earlier. I'm not sure if this is chicken that I got on sale and I canned it, took advantage of that, or if this is home canned white meat. from Homegrown. I don't remember. I'm really, really sorry. But either way, it was delicious and so convenient. The best thing about cooking this way and having this lifestyle is the amount of waste that is produced in my kitchen. So far for tonight's dinner, the waste counter is up 1 lid. To my little flour, I decided I'm going to get back to making biscuits. I just gave it a little stir with a pastry blender, and then I cut in 1/2 cup of butter. My butter is salted butter, and then I added 2/3 cup of milk. This is 2% milk. It's all I had on hand. Lots of times I use cashew milk. I've used coconut milk. Doesn't matter. Water works great in here too, but I just used 2/3 cup. And then I just sort of made it a little bit of a shaggy dough, just kind of moistened it with the fork, spun it around a few times, and then dumped it on the counter and just used my hands to press it into a shape. I actually folded them over on top of each other and kind of pressed it down a couple times to get some layering. And there it is. And I learned something. Biscuits cook much better in cast iron. They rise up better in cast iron. I had no idea, but I tried it and it's true, it does. So back to the soup. It looks good, smells good. Now let's season it up with some pepper. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of pepper. Some salt, because I don't have any salt or anything in my broths that I home can. I always have to add in the seasonings because I don't season it, so they are staying as universal as possible. And then I'm adding, this is home canned stock. We had processed a rooster, and I used that 1 quart jar of stock that I made out of that rooster, and it was really good. So the waste meter, another lid. So that's 2 lids so far of waste that I've created. So this is some rosemary that I crushed up, and I really couldn't tell you what that was. I'm assuming it was like sage. And so these are homemade noodles that I made. Chaz and I had made some egg noodles from our free-range eggs. We were trying to preserve as many of our eggs as possible, so we made these noodles, and I decided to throw them in. So the guys decided that they didn't really feel like regular chicken noodle soup. They wanted more of like a chicken pot pie without the crust because we were having biscuits. So I kind of changed my plan a little bit, and I begun improvising for what the guys wanted. So I did throw in the noodles, and then I decided to make it a little bit of a thicker soup. So basically I made a roux. I took some butter and I melted it, and I added some flour and mixed it all up and made it like a paste and cooked it for a bit so it didn't taste like flour. To thin this out, I added some milk and I just kind of mixed it all in there. I would have preferred to add some mashed potatoes. If I would have had some leftover mashed potatoes in the fridge, I would have opted to use that instead of this method. Just something my family prefers, and something it's just a little bit heartier than using what I did here, but it worked just the same. So basically I just added this into the soup and I stirred it until it was smooth. Again, I would much rather just use mashed potatoes in here than making this like goopy roux stuff. But it's just, I didn't have any potatoes made and I didn't feel like cooking it, and we just wanted to get supper made. So that's what I did. So the biscuits come out of the oven in that cast iron, and I really love cooking them. I'm in the cast iron. I'm definitely going to be doing that in the future. It was a delicious dinner, all homemade, homegrown, and I made 2 lids garbage, which, by the way, those lids are recyclable. So technically I didn't make any garbage at all. So that is a complete sustainability win. So on the flower farm, we are preparing for winter, and one of the jobs that I've done is I raked up a firewood tote of leaves. Now these leaves are very wet and they're very heavy for me to drag this bag around. So I did use the tractor, and I brought the leaves over to drag into the greenhouse. Unfortunately, I have been home alone, so I got to do this fun job by myself. Chaz did help a little bit with raking, but this is going to be used in my greenhouse as mulch. I am going in the direction of regenerative ag. And I'm going to be using those practices on my flower farm starting this winter. As you can see, my greenhouse has started to bring new life, even though it's been very, very cool in here and the heat is not on. I am still struggling with some issues with pests. These are my flowering kale that were a complete loss because of pests in the greenhouse, and I don't use any chemicals, and I'm just really learning and assessing this year. I did have some snapdragons that wanted to volunteer and flush in. I'd cut back a bunch of different crops and they're wanting to grow, including the eucalyptus. I'd cut that back in here, and it's been really cool, and it's actually wanting to push new growth. So just lots of learning things this year. I have a few hundred daffodil bulbs left to plant inside of the greenhouse, and then I also have some tulip bulbs that are in the refrigerator for forcing in the spring for my Mother's Day target of having fresh cut flowers to supply to our florists. I've also been working on getting everything winterized and getting my beds ready so I can plant early spring even before all the snow is gone. Just having my beds prepared for those cool season crops to get a leg up on my grow season. So having these essential items of, canned, homegrown, canned, preserved food in my pantry, it is just a game changer. So we're going to make a really quick soup. I found a small head of garlic. It's one of my garlics. I think it's a music variety that has the larger cloves. And so I'm just using up all 4 pieces of it in the soup. I'm just basically easily just crushing it with the knife and then peeling off the outside layer. I'm not mincing this or anything because I'm going to be pureeing my soup. So I'm just going to kind of throw everything in really rustically. Just whole, doesn't matter. Just chop it, throw it in there. And this is kind of like a dump and go sort of a deal. Next, I'm going to add a couple of smaller sized onions that I grew in my garden, and I'm just going to roughly chop them and throw them into the pot as well. My onions this year, they got this really weird papery thing. Like partway through their growing cycle, they started to get like the outside paper on the inside of the onion. I don't know if it was just because some of these were sets, like onion sets that I started. It was just very, very odd. I never had that before with my onions, so I'm assuming it's because some of these were more mature than the ones that I started from seed, and that's why they had that. But I cut it out and I threw it in. I'm sure it would have been fine. It wouldn't have hurt anything, but these onions are so powerful. Oh, they are so strong. I was going to put 4 of them in there, but I decided to only put 3 of the small ones that I could find, and that was plenty. I know many other people had watched my other videos and they had a really great recommendation of putting them in the freezer for like 10 minutes, and that would really help with the strength of that onion burn in the eyes. I thought of that after. Next time I might think of that before. Sweet baby Jesus, that burns. So this soup is going to be a tomato soup, and I have a whole bunch of tomatoes that I found in my greenhouse, and a lot of them weren't ripe. I brought them inside and they ripened up, and that is what we're going to use up today. We're going to use up some of these amazing, beautiful Roma tomatoes. They are an orange Roma. I got the seeds from an American company called Tomato Fest. Amazing. I love these tomatoes. Highly recommend them. So some of these tomatoes are quite wrinkly, and that's just fine. They are still going to make really great sauce. What I like to do is, as I'm washing them up, I like to examine them to make sure none of them have any bad spots, and I like to cut them off. But I also like to cut them open and check just to make sure that they're good. And They're all good. They have no bad spots in them. I didn't cut open every single one, but I just wanted to look inside and just make sure, because sometimes when you ripen them inside the house, you never know what you're going to get. But they all looked really good, and I have not had any bad spots yet on these tomatoes, so I'm throwing them all in whole. I'm not chopping them up, nothing. They're just going into the pot, and they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna cook. I don't even have to take the cores out on these tomatoes. The little end part is fine. That's just some extra nutrition. I don't even cut that off. We're just getting rustic and getting it in the pot. So rummaging, I found some parsley still from the garden I harvested, and some carrots. I keep carrots in Ziploc bags in moist paper towel, and they will keep for over a year for me in the fridge in the crisper like that. So I'm just digging through and finding a few carrots. I like to use carrots as a sweetener in my soups. You would be very surprised how much actual sugar is in commercial soups and stuff like that. It would shock you, especially here in Canada. It is kind of gross, actually. So I'm not making these nice at all. I'm just chopping them up, because once these are done cooking down, I'm going to go in here with my immersion blender, and it's all going to be just like a creamy tomato soup. So they're going to get chopped up rough as can be, because I'm on a time crunch. This needs to take me like less than 5 minutes. And so this is what we're going to do. I would throw them in whole, but I had a few minutes to spend today, so I thought I would chop them up anyway. But yeah, just throw it on in. I've determined that I don't love cooking. I love the creativity of cooking. So that means when it comes to prep work, it's not my favorite. I just want to get things in the pot and done. Like, I want to go from growing all this stuff to having it made into something really good and yummy, and that's something my family can enjoy. And so that's kind of how I do it. But I'm just chopping all that parsley up, and I'm throwing it in there as well. Stems and everything, because this is going to get pureed. There's a lot of nutrition in those stems. So I was rummaging in my freezer in the house, in my fridge freezer, and I found some leeks. And these are leek tops and some bottom parts that I had chopped up, and I'm just throwing a few handfuls of the leeks right on into here as well. I really had a good leek year in my greenhouse this year, and so I find this very convenient to have them chopped up, ready to go. I didn't go get the celery. I have celery chopped up in the freezer, as we made earlier in this video, but I did have some sitting right beside me on the counter of freeze-dried celery leaves and a few stems, so I just crumbled them up in there. It's really good flavor as well. I was just being lazy. It was really snowing heavily, and I wanted to get this just done and quickly. So I was just using whatever was kind of right next to me. I threw in some pepper. I probably used like almost a tablespoon of pepper in total in this recipe, and about a tablespoon of salt as well. This is pink Himalayan salt. I did go and grab some tomato juice. This is from last season, like last year. I canned this up. So when I was canning my tomatoes, I had juice that was left over, and I just pressure canned that up. So I decided to use that up as one of my like broth bases in this soup. And then I also used a chicken stock. This is one I had canned a while ago. I'm not sure if this was a homegrown chicken stock or what. It looks quite pale, so I know that there's no vegetables. When I made this stock, I just used it with bones. I didn't use any of any veggies in there, so that's why it's really pale. I think this is probably a stock that was from a store-bought chicken, or one that I had got from a local supplier. I wanted to make sure there was no salt added into this, so I did try it, and it was just plain stock, nothing. It was just chicken, nothing else added. So I dumped that on in there as well. And it's very, very flavorful, that stock, even though it doesn't look like it. It was very flavorful. So I'm going to give this a really good stir up, mix it all in together. And I'm going to get this set into my quick cooker and use my quick cooker as a slow cooker. So I didn't go drag out my slow cooker today. I just used the tool that I had sitting here that was very convenient. I set my slow cooker on this device at high for 4 hours. So it's cooked for just about 4 hours, and I'm putting my immersion blender in here to puree everything up. The tomatoes, if they would have cooked a little longer, they would have broken down a bit more, but it was fine. And so I just blended this all up until it was nice and smooth. I did taste it and it did need some seasoning. So I actually found some chicken bouillon and I added that. I also added a little bit of oregano and a little bit of thyme as well. And because Tyson was home, he likes soups a little bit sweeter. And the tomatoes, they weren't as sweet as some of my earlier ones this summer. So I added a couple of teaspoons of homemade brown sugar. This is organic cane sugar made with some molasses, mixed with molasses. I should say that's how you make brown sugar, molasses and sugar. So this is kind of, this recipe that I'm sharing is kind of like, I don't know if you've ever had SpaghettiOs or like in those tin cans that you get off the shelf, like the kids like the alphabets or the SpaghettiOs or whatever, the ravioli in the cans. This recipe really tastes like that. So I wanted to add some of my homemade noodles into here. Just, it gives it a texture. It's kind of like an alphabet soup, but with homemade noodles and tomato soup kind of thing. So I have lots of like broken bits of noodles, egg noodles that I had made earlier this year with my free-range chickens, eggs, and so that's what I added in there. And into the bowls, I had a couple little pieces of cheese, and I grated that up right into the bowl. And then I also didn't show it, but I did add like about a third of a cup of Parmesan cheese into the soup itself and mixed it all in there. And I added a little bit of cream as well, just like maybe a quarter cup. And then I dished it into the bowls on top of the cheese and let it melt. I also made grilled cheese sandwiches with sourdough bread to serve this with, and it was really, really delicious and easy and quick and convenient and all homemade, homegrown. The only thing that I bought was I added cream and cheese. And of course the bouillon, because I didn't make that, but I did have some freeze-dried. I could have used that instead. I didn't. I used the store-bought stuff. But realistically, I did not create any garbage. I opened 2 jars, which had 2 lids which are recyclable. And yeah, this is definitely a self-sustainable win. And it was delicious. Really good. Personally, I preferred it without the cheese, but it was good either way. The dog sniffer and the kitten sniffer were definitely getting them in trouble because it did smell pretty good in the house. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you found some inspiration in today's video, and I hope that it sparks some creativity in you and makes you want to try growing some of your own foods and preserving some of your own foods, or trying recipes or new things with the stuff that you already have. Anyways, so much love. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. We'll see you next time.